Excellency Ato Mekonnen Manezel, Minister of Industry of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Excellency Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Chairperson and Chairwoman of the African Union Commission, Mr. Ali Abu Sabah, Vice President for Operations of the African Development Bank, dear President Mohai, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Permit me to begin by thanking our constant hosts, the government and people of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, for their warm hospitality and friendship. This is further manifested by the presence of the Minister for Industry of the Federal Republic, who is here with us at the opening, representing His Excellency the President. We look forward to listening to the keynote speech to be delivered by His Excellency the Prime Minister tomorrow. I'm also delighted that Dr. Dlamini Zuma, Chairperson of the AU Commission, is able to join us here today. The existing strong collaboration between Pan-African institutions will no doubt benefit from her leadership and experience. Both of us being new to our functions in Addis Ababa, it is befitting to express the importance of this partnership for the good of Africa. Let me at this stage pay tribute to the memory of late Prime Minister Meles Zenawi, who participated in all previous sessions of ADF and whose noble efforts inspired us to remain steadfast in our belief that Africa can only do better. He will be sorely missed, and may his soul rest in peace. Excellences, ce forum est resté fidèle à son objectif, qui est de mieux faire comprendre les enjeux clés du développement de l'Afrique. Il offre aux parties prenantes un cadre pour combattre les stéréotypes. Il permet de débattre activement de nouvelles idées susceptibles d'accélérer la transformation du continent. Nos délibérations se déroulent dans un contexte de renouveau et de renaissance de notre continent. Le continent abrite 7 des 10 économies dont la croissance est la plus rapide dans le monde. Pour autant, nous comptons 6 des 10 sociétés les plus inégalitaires de la planète. Le défi pour nous va bien au-delà de la consolidation des bons résultats en matière de croissance. Il nous faut aussi tenir compte des intérêts des groupes les plus vulnérables. La façon dont nous utilisons les abondantes ressources naturelles du continent sera déterminante à cet égard. Dans l'état actuel des choses, l'Afrique a bien du chemin à faire pour pouvoir tirer complètement parti de son potentiel en ressources naturelles. Il est évident que nous ne sommes pas encore là. Nous nous préparons à faire face à la hausse de la demande mondiale de ressources naturelles dans un contexte de préoccupation internationale quant à la durabilité de l'environnement et au changement climatique. Il faut donc des changements de notre part. Il faudrait améliorer les processus d'accès aux ressources minières et d'exploitation de ces ressources de façon à s'attaquer à la pauvreté et à promouvoir l'équité entre générations. Il faudrait aussi mieux utiliser nos ressources terrestres et marines. En bref, la conjoncture mondiale et les besoins de développement de l'Afrique exigent de nous que nous nous penchions dans la présente session sur la gestion et la mobilisation des ressources naturelles au service du développement de l'Afrique. Commençons par avoir une image plus claire des enjeux. L'Afrique représente, par exemple, 3/4 de l'offre mondiale de platine et la moitié de celle de diamants et de chrome. Elle assure jusqu'à 1/5 de l'approvisionnement en or et en uranium, tout en devenant de plus en plus un centre de production pétrolière et gazière, avec plus de 30 pays devenus désormais producteurs de ces matières. Pourtant, à quelques exceptions près, l'Afrique ne consomme pas de ces ressources minérales et d'autres qu'elle possède en abondance, pas plus qu'elle n'y ajoute une valeur significative. Au contraire, le continent est exportateur net de ces matières premières qui alimentent la prospérité et le développement des autres régions. Le cas de la terre est tout aussi révélateur. L'Afrique possède 60% des terres arables en friche du monde, c'est-à-dire que la majorité des terres pouvant nourrir une population mondiale en croissance rapide s'y trouvent. Cependant, les rendements actuels sont faibles et les questions foncières sont prises dans les tourbillons de l'opposition entre besoins économiques et droits culturels et historiques. De la même façon, l'Afrique possède des ressources forestières couvrant plus de 23% de sa superficie. Le bassin du Congo offre à cet égard un exemple remarquable. Il représente le deuxième forêt du monde par sa superficie et fournit leurs moyens de subsistance à 60 millions de personnes. Il s'agit d'une ressource précieuse au regard à la fois des changements climatiques et de la demande mondiale de services forestiers qui devrait augmenter. On peut en dire autant des ressources de la pêche et de l'aquaculture qui, si elles sont bien gérées, pourraient représenter plus de la valeur que les autres ressources non renouvelables qui nous sont plus familières. Devant ces immenses ressources, on est en droit de se demander pourquoi notre continent souffre toujours d'une transformation économique limitée et d'un faible emploi. Ce n'est pas certainement à cause du déficit d'exploitation. Les ressources minérales continuent d'attirer les investissements directs étrangers considérables et représentent la part la plus importante des activités économiques de 4 pays africains sur 5. Les ressources terrestres sont également exploitées et jusqu'à 754 transactions foncières couvrant plus de 56 millions d'hectares ont déjà été conclues. Rien qu'au Burkina Faso, la part du secteur minier dans la croissance des exportations est passée de 2% à 41% au cours des 5 dernières années. Le constat qu'impose cette situation est que l'actuel modèle de développement fondé sur les ressources naturelles ne fonctionne pas de manière à assurer l'équité et à stimuler le développement. Ladies and gentlemen, the ongoing Glencore-Xstrata merger is a good starting point to show why this is the case. Glencore is a commodities trading and mining company that is headquartered in the small village of Bar in the Zug canton of Switzerland, a country with no mining activity. The company operates mostly in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, but it is worth more than the economy of that resource-rich country. Xstrata, another mining company, is also based in Switzerland. Their ongoing merger will create a $70 billion mining powerhouse, which will be the 4th largest in the world. It will create a vertical integration of mining and trading operations that will control over half of the global zinc and copper markets. We are therefore compelled to ask just how much of the value created by the merger will benefit the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Glencore-Xstrata merger underscores the need to address the important issue of resource ownership and control and the distribution of benefits from mining operations. Of the 20 major mining companies currently operating in Africa, only one, Anglo Gold Ashanti, is homegrown. Moreover, while ownership of mineral resources is vested in the state, nearly all mining operations are foreign-owned, with marginal local ownership. Indeed, the current mining model is essentially that of an enclave industry, with very weak links with other economic and social sectors. Firms import nearly all their inputs and export nearly all output without processing. Associated export earnings seldom enter the national economy, and the most important tasks are performed by expatriate labor. A sector that exists in this form is surely not sustainable in the long run, and it cannot underpin Africa's long-term social and economic transformation. This model of extraction has to be examined in a sober and realistic context. It must be understood that seeking a greater share of benefits from national patrimony cannot be reduced just to resource nationalism. In the last 10 years, commodity prices have hit a super cycle, yet African share of windfall earnings have been minuscule compared to what mining companies have realized. Average net profits for the top 40 mining companies grew by 156% just in 2010, whereas the take for governments grew only 60%, most of which was accounted for by Australia and Canada, two countries that graciously want to share their experience with Africa. Indeed, most African countries got much less than is due to generous tax holidays given to mining companies. Looking at the issue from another dimension, the profit made by the same set of mining companies in 2010 was $110 billion, which was equivalent to the merchandise export of all African least developed countries in the same year. It is fair to say, therefore, that the resource to development model that puts raw material suppliers at such a significant disadvantage has to be transformed. There are other examples of inequitable returns to African natural resources. A lot of the illegal and unreported fishing takes place in African waters. Annual losses amount to $629 million, which can cover the infrastructure funding gap of a country like Mozambique, which is very dependent on fisheries. Similarly, in the case of Somalia, its revenue loss from illegal fishing could easily have funded the United Nations Coordinated Development Program for 2011, stretching from poverty reduction, governance, rule of law, security, gender to HIV/AIDS. Given this state of affairs, it is imperative that we exercise greater strategic control over our natural resources. Rising purchasing power in emerging global players is indeed increasing demand for natural resources. It is important for Africa to retain and capture more value. Similarly, the extensive agricultural land leased or sold to meet global food security challenges should be configured to meet Africa's food security and other needs first, now and in the future. The same considerations apply to logging, particularly the export of low-value unprocessed wood products. There is also a well-known link between natural resources exploitation and conflicts, which, of course, impacts on development. Poor governance of natural resources sector has led to conflicts that are fueled by many grievances. They arise from excluded or disenfranchised groups, issues of access, rights, perceptions of unfair distribution of benefits, or indeed the business of war. Classic cases include diamonds related to conflicts in Angola, Sierra Leone, and Liberia, the case of gold, diamonds, coltan, and other minerals in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and so on. The insurgency and unrest in the Niger Delta is also caused by similar factors. Ladies and gentlemen, structural measures to address grievances and improve transparency and overall governance of the sector will require time and concerted effort by all stakeholders. There are related short-term actions that could give us quick wins. Internationally, we welcome the Dodd-Frank Act and similar efforts by the European Union Commission to adopt legislation requiring publicly traded and private EU companies to disclose payments to governments made in exchanges for oil, gas, mineral, and forest resources. These proposals need to move from paper to reality. Allow me to share a few principles that might put us firmly on the path of using Africa's natural resources wealth for its benefit. First, and first of all, we need to embed long-term development objectives firmly into the processes for extracting natural resources. To take the example of mining, our current focus seems to be mainly on collecting taxes, whereas it should be on using the sector and its resource rents to drive socioeconomic development. This means investments in infrastructure, research, and human capital development through conditionality for local content. This is what other regions have done. This is what Africa needs to do. Second, our natural resources sectors must become socially and environmentally accountable. This implies increased participation so that a broader share of citizens contribute to policy and benefits from economic and social returns in natural resources sector, including gainful employment, are visible. One is sadly reminded in this instance about the Marikana tragedy in which 34 people lost their lives. While the headlines have focused on the violence and economic impact of the incident, there is an untold story of marginalized workers and limited communal benefits. Marikana illustrates the power asymmetry between mining companies and its workers on one hand, and the lack of institutional protection of workers and communities on the other. It is about workers who cannot survive on 4,000 rands a month because they have to pay 800 rands of rent for one room in corrugated iron shacks, pay their living expenses, and also send money to their families back home. It is also about inadequate social infrastructure, including for health services, which are vital for people working in such onerous conditions. This is an untenable situation. Mining companies are reaping super profits, and platinum prices extracted in mines such as Marikana have increased fourfold since 1992. The desire for economic gain must be balanced by good environmental stewardship and real corporate social responsibility. Third, we need to make a significant push to use natural resources as a springboard for diversification and eventual industrialization. This would require policies that deliberately encourage innovation and that establish local content goals and objectives. It would require ensuring backward and forward linkages to promote internally articulated economies and regional value chains. Fourth, we need to continuously build human and institutional capacities and to create knowledge-based and competitive natural resource sectors. This requires strengthening our bargaining power to negotiate better contracts. Notable examples are unjustifiable tax holidays, illicit financial flows, or poorly articulated resource for infrastructure swaps. It will also mean building up domestic capacities and skills to participate in natural resource value chain. Similarly, our institutional frameworks and political processes must steer the natural resources sector in such a way that it supports transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, the good news is that Africa has made strides to formulate credible blueprints such as the African Mining Vision and the Land Policy Initiative, which, if implemented, will produce inclusive growth and economic transformation. We need now to start operationalizing such frameworks. To sum up, we have to shift the focus from the short-term and limited financial benefits to long-term development options. This is a joint responsibility of governments, private sector, civil society organizations, ordinary citizens, shareholders, and workers. It is in this context that I would like to thank partners who have been very supportive of the efforts to establish African Minerals Development Center. I have shared these thoughts to stimulate a rich and healthy debate. It is my candid hope that deliberations at this session will help chart a way forward on these issues. The broad and intellectually diverse range of stakeholders here present assures me that this will certainly be the case. Thank you.